Hello, this is Tiombe and you were listening to Off to the Land of Milk and Honey podcast. And this episode is The Company You Keep. We will be speaking on altars, elementals, and the ancestors. And this is a podcast that is a thrival guide for Indigenous women. And when I say Indigenous women, I mean Native women, Native American women, Black women, because we are indigenous to this whole world, Latina, Asian women who identify with their pre colonial traditions and ancestors, and others. So everybody is welcome to listen, but this is specifically for Indigenous women, women of color, because there is a deficit in our joy, there is a deficit in our ease, there is a deficit in our feelings of freedom and liberation. I hold the intention of self mastery, which is mental mastering our minds, which means changing our perspectives, understanding that we have free will to change our perspectives. I apologize if anybody listened to the first one and they're like, I've heard this already, girl. But for instance, if you have someone who's practicing gratitude every day, practicing mindfulness, they are going to receive more abundance. You are going to be more susceptible to miracles because you're understanding that miracles are happening daily throughout the whole day. Someone who is complaining all day and blaming others and not in control of their lives, not sovereign, not empowered, they're going to get that. So they're just going to keep getting more and more of what they're saying there's not enough of, which is basically scarcity. They're coming from a place of scarcity and extreme criticism. So it's really about how you look at things, and we have that free will to make up however we want to see things is based upon us and really how we value ourselves. It's really like, do I deserve miracles? And most of us have been trained to believe that life has to be hard and we don't deserve miracles. We've been trained to be in suffering. And that's something that I'm working through. And I just want to make it really clear that I definitely still have stuff that I'm working on. These are just things that I'd like to share with my community that have been supportive to me. And some things I'm still trying to figure out. And I think that we're going to forever be learning until the day we die. And then we keep evolving even after that. So mastery. Then the second thing is behavioral modification, just identifying our own shadow in a compassionate, but taking accountability for our shadows. So, for instance, we all have things about us that we got to work on. That's just a non negotiable. We're human beings. This is a dual environment where we have animalistic behaviors, and it's important to recognize these things, and it's important to recognize that we're always going to have something that we're working on. New level, new devil. I personally think when we recognize our shadow and we work on integrating it, that we become more empowered rather than it doesn't have to be a whole shame session where we're looking in the mirror and we're just I just got a flash, like looking in the mirror, just being like, "Gosh," just some evil villain and just so mad at ourselves that we did this or whatever. We can compassionately take responsibility for our shadows, things that we need to work on about ourselves. And I think that that is very empowering. So for instance, I'll use myself as an example. I know that I'm very intuitive, very psychic, get the visions, get the dreams, pick up on things. I can be very sensitive. Not like I don't have a backbone, but I can be very aware. And I understand this about myself, which can be a gift or it can really be a detriment to me. And so I realize this about myself. And so I take responsibility for this. And And I make sure that I wake up very early in the morning before my son, and I meditate and I pray and I do all of my grounding work and my devotion before I even look at my phone. And I actually just started meditating again. I started doing transcendental meditation. That was the first big step in my healing process back in 2013, I believe. I started doing transcendental meditation and I would do it on and off. And then I really just haven't been doing it for years. Even when I would meditate, I would just kind of like do something else. But I really just haven't been meditating. And I've been meditating as of recently and specifically doing my transcendental meditation. And it is dope. Also, just a side shallow note, I noticed that my face is more snatched because the cortisol isn't pumping through my face and making my face inflamed. So, side note, that's wonderful, but it really has it's just a beautiful thing to meditate, and I highly just recommend that for everyone. And even if you don't want to do that, just grounding yourself in the morning is really important before you even pick up your phone or doing something. Some people like to run, jog, some people like to exercise, some people like to read, but just do something where you can come back into yourself. I think that that type of thing is really important. But just also just about meditation, with prayer, it's a masculine active type of spiritual tool. And I love prayer. Prayer is amazing. But I love also meditation because it's a passive type of tool. And I really was like, why haven't I been doing this? But it literally, I'm not even gonna front. It literally feels like a a brain orgasm. Like just it just feels so it feels like my brain is being massaged and like honey's being poured all over it or something. It just feels really good to just turn that off, turn the brain off, and just be in a state of receptivity and just be in a state of stillness. So, yes. Okay. So, behavioral modification, recognizing our shadows, recognizing the things that we have challenges with and turning them into a positive. When we recognize them, we can then integrate them and these things can become what makes us unique. And the whole thing right now that I'm really on is like with Pluto and Aquarius, age of Aquarius, it's really about our uniqueness and giving that to our communities. And that's special, sacred, unique medicine for people in our communities. I just think everybody just needs to shine their little light right now, their own unique light. We're all made so differently and we can all learn from each other. So that's behavioral modification. And then the third thing is just self protection and cleansing, using spiritual tools to protect ourselves. Um, that is what this is about. And because it's a lot of information, I've decided to use the Kemetic tree of life and the Kabbalah to explain. And so now we're on Malkuth and on Geb. This past episode was on Malkuth. This is still Malkuth because I'm using some of the teachings that I learned. And then probably next week we're going to run through Geb. And please get your pencil and paper ready for that because I'm going to run through herbs and things for our health that are really important for our temples, for our bodies. Because honestly, there's just so much going on right now, but I think that whenever there's so much lower vibrational, intense things happening, there's also a lot of high vibrational, intense things, beautiful things happening. So I think that a lot of us are upgrading at this time. We are receiving downloads. We're receiving what our mission is. We're receiving what we need to do. It's a lot of beautiful things happening as well. So we want to make sure that as this beautiful energy is coming through us, that our temples and our bodies are in a state and a place to receive all of this energy and all of this high vibrational energy that's flowing through us and really working with our nervous system. I'm going to have a lot of stuff with the nervous system that's really helped me. Herbs, and I have a blend that I make a big batch of it and I'll be sharing that next week. And this is going to be every Wednesday. I'll be putting it out every week. And I also, little side note, want to say that I'm going to have a Patreon. I just want to thank everybody for coming to the show. Thank you, Brian Hargrove, for playing with me at Philosophical Research Society in the library. It was beautiful. Thank you, Dama. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everybody, for supporting me. It was a really beautiful, beautiful show. I haven't performed in a really long time by myself, and it felt really good to sing, and it felt really good to sing it sober. So, I used to always have, like, some whiskey or tequila or something like that, and I just was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do my vocal exercises, and I'm going to, um, just be a vessel and allow for sound and what needs to flow through me to flow through me." And so I'm so grateful for that experience, and I'm proud of myself. So let's get into this. This is the company you keep. And so, first of all, I just want to start this off with there's a lot going on with ICE, with the Epstein files and everything. And these are all things that Black Americans have been experiencing for hundreds of years. Trafficking, cannibalism. There was a special slave trade to specifically eat slaves. There were recipe books to eat us. Even with the lynchings, people would take home parts of the body and put it on their mantle or cook them. This has been something that's been happening for a long time. Young girls, young Black slave girls, I forget what they were called, something ladies. They were sold at the price of a house. Uh, and the plantations that were the most profitable were the breeding plantations, where women were just held hostage and had to sleep with their fathers, their brothers, their sons, their whatever, and their children were given away. And I can't even imagine that type of trauma. And so this has been happening for hundreds of years, and because it's happened to someone else now, people care. And myself and many Black women feel like this is a bit of a slap in the face because um, this is going back to slavery when we weren't considered humans. And there's microaggressive things that happen that hold the intention that we're still not considered humans. And you can see this factually with Black women and children dying in maternity wards, sorry, because we're not heard. People don't see us as humans. Um, you see this with people um, turning a blind eye with Black women being abused. People like to call us angry or crazy so they can justify the abuse that happens to us. But when a white woman says it, it's, oh my goodness. First of all, I want a world where my child, when he grows up, it is peaceful. Everybody's living their best life. Everybody's abundant. Everybody is feels good and feels loved. And I know that that's probably la la land, but I really do want to see that. And I really want that for everybody. But I feel as if it's important to recognize the harmful behaviors and dangerous behaviors that still exist in this country for groups of us. Because if we don't recognize it and if we don't see it and if we don't heal it, then it's going to keep coming back in a different form, just like in our lives. When we don't learn our little lessons, it comes back in another body. And I think that it's important for us also to really have discernment at this time because things are going to get more chaotic. And I'm not saying this, it's like, oh my God, everything's going to be burning down. And I don't know, maybe it will. I don't know. But it's important to now to really recognize who is your ally, who do you want in your inner circle, because when things start to break down a little bit more and things start to happen to other people that have been happening to us for many years, it's going to be a lot of fear. It's going to be a lot of chaos. It's going to be a lot of harvesting of our energy. Black women, please, please, we do not have to be a Captain Save a Ho to everybody. We really have to think about who who cared about us when it wasn't happening to them. Who cared? Who reached out? Who had empathy? Who had compassion for us, for our children, when it was not happening to them? Please understand that. We are very compassionate and loving and forgiving and kind people, but that type of thing, when we don't have discernment with that, it becomes abuse and we become doormats. And we need to put all of our energy into being our best selves, loving ourselves, because then that is reflected to the outside world. And that's how you really make a change. I have nothing against people who are marching and everything like that. I think that sometimes that is so needed. I've been boycotting Target since January. Since last January, I'm so down. But I think that we really can make an impact when it's one by one, when we're doing the inner work, when we're being our best selves, when we are doing the very revolutionary thing of raising a child. And in the mundane world, we are making subtle adjustments with how our child is able to express themselves like we weren't. How our child is able to express their anger and not repress it. And we find new ways. Like in the mornings, I breathe with my son. We do our little yoga, we do our stretching. We connect that way. Look, teaching my son new ways, that is a revolution. So just be very mindful of tricksters. Be mindful of people who want to act like they care. Be mindful of people who want to, take a ride in your boat when things start to crumble and act like they were always an ally when they are not. There are lots of people who put on spiritual costumes and there are lots and they can look like people who are talking about God and love and unity and all the things, but are diabolical. They can look like, I've encountered women who are just like the divine feminine and da, 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 but act like fucking frat boys with other women. You have people who do yoga and I love me some yoga, but you know, have the discernment. People who do yoga, travel to Costa Rica and cosplay African goddesses, but treat black women like shit. So it's just really important. And this can be people who are not us, not of our culture. And this can be people who are not of our culture, and this could be people who are part of our culture. There's lots of Uncle Tom, there's lots of white Tinas, there's lots of people who are whitewashed as fuck, who are a part of our community, but they want to keep it how it is, and then there are people who are not part of our community, very rarely that are true allies, not just costumes to be allies when they really want to keep the status quo. 'Cause that's what it is. A lot of people really want to keep the status quo. They don't wanna give up their seat because they don't wanna give up their inheritance, or they don't want to really do the work because they don't really have to. So they just put on little costumes and they say that they voted for Obama and they hop from one ethnic hashtag problem to another ethnic. Oh, okay, it's Black Lives Matter. Oh, okay, Asians. Oh, okay, Palestine. Be cautious of the people who love to talk about the genocides outside of America, but don't really want to talk about the genocides inside of America that they received their inheritance from. Be cautious of the people who use spirituality to scratch their superiority kink. Be cautious of the people who need to be the white saviors and get uncomfortable when a black woman is walking in joy and is empowered and is sovereign and doesn't need a white savior. Okay? These are real things. It's called nice racism. I would take a fucking bigot all day, every day over a fucking liberal who low key wants to be my savior and low key wants to keep me oppressed so they can keep being a savior. They can keep being the person who's casually low key the fucking oppressor. But at the same time, I forget her name. I think it's Fiona something, but she has the tarot deck Daughters of the Moon, and it's a great, beautiful, gorgeous tarot deck that I have. And I guess I got it like a older one. She had a flyer in there. She's a white woman, and she had a whole workshop of how to basically stop being part of white supremacy for white people, which I thought was great. And this is before, wokeness or whatever that is. This was back in like the 90s or the early 2000s. I saw this flyer that I got with my tarot deck. So there are people who are really doing the work before it was cool. Even when I used to travel with Platinum Pipe Pipers and Elle, Invincible was all about pro-Palestine before it was cool. They would educate me. They would educate anybody about what was happening there, and I thought that it was really beautiful. And this was before it was cute and cool and a hashtag and all the things. But, like, just be mindful of these things because at the end of the day, the reason why I'm saying all of these tools and the reason why I have this podcast is because whenever things do get hectic, we are vibrating so high that we don't even have to worry about a lot of shit. We don't have to worry. We're not in there because they try to say, "Oh, it's wrong place, wrong time." No, 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 no. That's not. It's the vibration. If you keep your vibration high, trouble can't find you. And that's not saying that you won't have sorrow, you won't be sad, fucked up shit won't happen because it will. That's a part of life. But there's a lot of stuff that you can avoid if you keep your vibration high. And so this is why I'm doing this. So just be mindful of all of that. I think that that's all I want to say about that. I might say more later. So let's talk about altars. Now, altars are my jam. I love a good altar. I have altars all throughout my house. You can have all types of altars. You can have ancestor altars. You can have an altar for beauty, Oshun, Yemaya, mothering, nurturing, Heteru, Hathor for beauty and prosperity. You can have an inner child altar. You can make an altar for anything. You can make an altar for your family. You can make an altar for strength, for courage, anything you want, you can make an altar for. An altar is a space where you go that basically generates energy. You pour energy into it and it begins to generate energy. It's a place where I trauma dump. If I'm like feeling, especially if I just feel like shit and I don't know what's going on or I feel really sad or whatever, I light that motherfucking candle and I get in the tub and I tell you my yeah and mommy water all my little troubles. And then I let it all go down the drain. So I love that. But you could have an altar for anything. You could have an altar. It doesn't even have to be inner child. It could be an altar for when you were 20 years old and some traumatic stuff happened, and you're like, I want to work through this. I want to take the wisdom from this and get the wisdom for it. It's beautiful. You know what I have learned. You are actually reflecting your altar, the things that are on your altar, up to the heavens, and then it is reflecting that back down to the material plane, to the matter, to Malkuth, right? So I'm going to read a couple passages. And this book I will have on Patreon. In reflecting the macrocosm, the aspirant creates her own reflection of the universe, which is in turn mirrored by the macrocosms, and so on. And I'll read another one. And this is um, from a book, but they are talking about a passage in the Bible, Matthew 16, chapter 16, 18 through 20. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and to thee I shall give the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatever thou shalt bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And this is this idea that as above, so below, right? And to go even further, what I believe in my own understanding is the things that support in sending your wishes up from the material, from your altar, from matter, the material plane to the heavens and then back down are the elements. And I want to read a couple things about the elements. The ancient Egyptians saw the universe as divided into three portions: heaven, earth, and the Tuat, or underworld, each of which was populated by its own special brand of divinities. As the Egyptian religion slowly evolved, the concepts of heaven were also adjusted to suit the prevailing climate of religious opinion. Two mountains were originally seen as supporting the celestial regions, but these were eventually replaced by four pillars, each under the direction of an appropriate divinity. In time, these became associated with the four cardinal points. One more. The four elements of air, fire, water, and earth, the principles of which needed to be mastered and understood. The ego needed to be stripped away. The magician was able to control the four elements. I prefer to think of this a bit in terms of winning their friendship and confidence rather than control. So, the elements, right? Okay. So I personally believe that if you do not have the four elements on your altar can't isn't really alive. I have been working in spirituality for a long time, and for a long time I would not have the elements on my altar. And having the elements are so important for your altar because I do believe, like for instance, when they said four pillars, like to me, it's like the elements make the cardinal points alive, right? So in this book, Ladder of Lights, which I will put on my Instagram when I post this, but with Ladder of Lights, this is a beautiful book. It is a book that basically talks about the four worlds and each Sephira. So the Sephira is in the Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life, there are 10 Sephiras, and these are energy points in their lessons. Energy points that can be, oh man, completely dissected, but I see it as kind of like behavioral modification with especially like with the kinetic tree of life. It is something that we can see this energy point, this chakra, and it in excess, it's this it looks like this. And when it is balanced, it looks like this. When it's not working at all, it looks like this. That's how I see it. But within each Sephira is four worlds. So it's a room, which is a world, and behind that room is a world, and behind that room is a room. Behind, so it really gets in there, but we're not going to go into all of that. So anybody who's like, what? Don't worry, we're not going to go there. I'm breaking it all down really easily. But if you are really interested, Ladder of Lights by William G. Gray is a great book. He's a phenomenal author. But what he talks about is that in order to go into paradise, you have to master the four elements. He uses the archetypes of the fixed astrological signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, as archetypes of the elements. But these are the traits and these are the attributes that they say that that he says that you have to master in order to go into the gates of paradise. And for Taurus, which is the ox, it is strength and patience. Leo, lion, courage and nobility. Scorpio, eagle, because my moon is a Scorpio. So anybody who's a Scorpio head, like if you're vibrating very high, you're in the scorpionic energy of the eagle. Not all Scorpios are trying to like get you back. Not all Scorpios are trying to fight. Not all Scorpios are trying to get revenge. That's very low vibrational animalistic Scorpios. When you're vibrating high, you're the eagle. Side note. Scorpio eagle is swiftness and aspiration. And man, which represents Aquarius, is intelligence and devotion. So he didn't say in this book, oh, well, external conditions need to be this way for then you to do this for yourself and to master these attributes, and then you could be in the paradise. He said, no, you need to master these things internally, then you could enter paradise. There is no mention of the external world being in any particular energetic frequency, angry chaos in order for me to go into paradise. And that is a really important point because when you're doing spiritual work, when you are doing magic or whatever you want to call it, all of us are doing magic all the time. When we say we want to go to the store or we say that we want to go make a certain particular dinner, That's magic. You get into your car, you go, da, da, da. If you told somebody that that's what the fuck you were gonna do, that you had to get into a vehicle and you were gonna drive and you had a GPS and you had a stove, maybe 500 years ago, they would look at you like you are crazy. That is magic. You know, we're always creating magic. But when we're intentionally doing it this way, I think that it's important to note that it has nothing to do with external world. And that's really what I want to say right now. And then we'll go into other things. Everything that I'm saying here, this is about self mastery. This is about using what you got to get what you want. This is about alchemy. There are lots of people who use spiritual information and use spiritual tools to try to control other people, to try to harm other people, to try to manipulate other people. And I'm sorry, but not sorry. I feel like that is very low confidence. I got bullied as a child. I need to go to therapy, maybe some mental disorder going on type of energy to me. The magicians, scientists is really what we're doing because we're figuring out, oh, okay, we're figuring out our own technology and then we're shaping it and we're molding it. We're coming up with solutions that fit us. And then we're doing all of this internal work. And then it is magically, beautifully, because the Most High, the Divine, is the most intelligent of how this whole fucking world is set up. It is then reflected. So, for instance, someone who's vibrating low and doing low vibrational magic, somebody who is very insecure and needs other people to behave in a certain way for them to be happy, is going to do a love spell on someone, right? I want to control you. I want to dominate you. I want to, you know, and not in a kinky way, but just like more like, I want you to do what I want you to do because I'm a baby man. But they're gonna do a love spell. Someone who's high vibrational is gonna do a love spell on themselves. They're gonna be like, "Yo, I wanna feel more love. I'm gonna feel more love. I wanna burn a pink candle. I wanna take a rose bath. I wanna fall in love with myself, and I wanna learn to love every part of myself. I'm gonna take myself on a date. I'm gonna make myself a nice dinner. I'm gonna love on myself more. I'm gonna talk to myself nicer." That is high vibrational magic. And when he says, these are the things that you need to master within yourself to be in paradise, that is self mastery. That is high vibrational. Any occultist, and let me just say real quick, we've been taught that the word occult is demonic or something like that. It's not. Occult just means hidden knowledge. It means hidden culture, right? So, like when our grandmothers, and then I know mine did, when our grandmothers used to use olive oil to put crosses on top of our doors or used to pray on us or used to do, just do stuff. I grew up in Pentecostal church and Southern Baptist. And they said this was all occult stuff. So a cult is not bad, but it's what people's intention is. So somebody could be a Christian and go to church and all the things, but they're steadily creating rumors about somebody and doing all types of weird ass shit. That's demonic ass behavior. There's a lot of people who have a insatiable need to create rumors about people and to spread them and to control people and to what that's a demonic entity, you know? So it's all about your intention. My intention is that I work for the Great Mother. I work for the Most High. I work for the Divine. I answer to that because I understand that I only can see with my human eyes. Some of us can see a little bit more. Some of us have vision. Some of us are psychic as fuck, but we still see it from a very small perspective. We see it from what has happened before. So that's why I don't try to control someone else or manipulate somebody else or try to give karma to somebody else. I just move the fuck out of the way. When we try to involve ourselves, when we try to play God, that's when things just it becomes a slippery slope because we can only see from what we know. So if somebody's like, "Yes, I want this person and this person to be with this person and da 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 da," it's like, "Well, what if What if you're being brought somebody better? And this could be a friendship, this could be, a job, this could be a boss, it could be whatever. Because we only know, and literally therapists will tell you, like psychiatrists will tell you our present is based off of the past, right? So that's why we don't have any business trying to control someone, trying to control events. I say, yes, this is what I want, or better, the elements. I use magic, I use all of that to break free from any belief systems that I've had and try to create new ones, new opportunities, you know? So the elementals, the elemental. We may think of the elemental spirit therefore as pure units of energy having the characteristics of one particular element. So how I see the elementals is that they exist within the elements. It's kind of like workers, it's kind of like helpers. So they bring it all down. They're like, "Oh, okay, water, you need the water. Okay, earth, you need the earth." They just bring everything down. So when you put this all together, you call in your elementals. You put your elemental on your altar, and then you call in the elementals, and you then begin your prayers, your meditation, your intentions for yourself, the directions, the cardinals, and the elements and how they work so you can put the elements in the right direction. Now, I want to make something very clear. People who are listening to this who are already on the spiritual path, they know that there are many different technologies. What do they say? The man who's read all books has read none. So like once you start really getting into a lot of stuff, you realize that, oh my God, like there's so many different ways of looking at things and sometimes they overlap and sometimes they don't. For instance, like when you think of the moon, you think of the feminine. And you think of the ocean, you think of Yemaya, you think of Yishel, you think of our moon cycle, and emotions and all the things. But then there are also moon gods. Osiris is a moon god. When you think of the sun, you think of the masculine, you think of clarity, you think of Ra, you think of light. But then there's also goddesses, Segmet, that are sun goddesses. So you just start to realize that it's best to have a flexible understanding of things. They say that people who are very rigid with understanding things are have a lower intelligence rate. They are a little dense. Sorry. Um, but you can tell people who have the understandings and have firm understandings, but then it's also just you have to also be flexible because you understand that things can completely be demolished with another understanding. Like people have different elements with different directions. It's really, really, really what you feel the most aligned with. And even though I love the Kabbalah, I don't follow it word for word. There's some things where I'm like, that doesn't apply to me. At the end of the day, we all have our own stew. We all have our own gumbo, and we're just taking things, this and putting it in there, and this and putting it in there. There's a specific stew that we brew for ourselves. So what I'm saying, you might agree with some of it, you might agree with all of it, you might not agree with any of it. You know what I mean? Or it might spark an interest in something else. Um, and this is not like again, we're in the age of Aquarius, and that is your own knowing, that is your own understanding, that is your own uniqueness. Um, and that is your own intelligence. And whereas when we were in Age of Pisces, it was about following this person and following that person and worshiping this person and that person and putting people up on pedestals. And this is about you being your own, you doing what you need to do and being in your own uniqueness for the future, because that's what Aquarius is the next seven generation. It is the water bearer. It is the person who is in devotion to bring nutrients to the next 7 generations. That's why right now we with Pluto in Aquarius, and Pluto is death, regeneration, and power. Pluto is not playing. with anybody who is not trying to bring nutrients and nurturing to the next set of generations. And when you think about the next, who can bring in the next mothers? What is the bearer carrying? It's water, Mami Wata. It's about women and children. So that's why all this shit is being fucking exposed. All of this stuff is coming out because Pluto doesn't play. And if you're talking about Aquarius, this is about the evolution of humanity. And if somebody is harming people who are bringing in the evolution of humanity, bringing in the future, you're gonna get taken out. This is also the Wheel of Fortune here. Could say it's 1, but I think it's more 10, but it doesn't matter. It's when you look at tarot, you could say it's magician or you could say the Wheel of Fortune, but I think it's the Wheel of Fortune. Because if it was a magician, people would still be doing smoke and mirrors to get out of this shit, but they can't now because time is up. And a lot of people don't understand that civilizations always crumble. People don't understand that it's always the pride before the fall. You know, people got away with a lot of stuff. Pluto in Sagittarius, Scorpio, Capricorn. People cannot get away with bullshit in Pluto in Aquarius because it is for Mami Wata, and Mami Wata ain't playing. And so, yeah. But anyway, so North is Earth according with Kabbalah. North is Earth, East is air, South is fire, West is water. But me personally, how I understood the directions was from Miss Myra Moss, OG astrologer, master teacher. If you can go watch some of her videos, she's phenomenal. And she says that North is the mothers, North is the water, and it is the mothers. It is Mami Wata, it is Nut, and East is fire, it is rebirth. Sun rises in the east, it is the masculine, the divine masculine. South, it is earth, it is the ancestors. West, it is air, and it is communication. Yes, so that's how I see it. And so I personally set up my elements on my altar according, and there are even different ones than the 2 that I just mentioned. I know in many native tribes, there's different ones. So it's really like whichever one that you feel drawn to. And then once you do that, you call them the elementals, and then you get it popping. And I want to talk about the ancestors for just for a bit. So number 1, the ancestors, if your ancestors were trifling on Earth, they're trifling in the sky, babe. And there's just no way getting around that. There's nothing happened to where they're automatically like way better or anything like that. I love ancestral veneration. I love pouring out libations. I give thanks to my ancestors every morning. I say thank you. I say thank you for helping me be here. I think the ancestors are great for trauma dumping. um, just telling them however you feel. I asked them to help me. I have felt so heavy before, and I light an incense. I have my water, I have my elements on my ancestor altar, and I ask them to please help me. And immediately, I feel as if it's just a weight has been lifted. And so basically, your ancestors, from what I understand, your ancestors stay in the astral plane, and your ancestors will fuck it up if you need to. But the thing about us as being Black Americans is that we have ancestors that died through every element. So we have ancestors that um, were burned alive. So you have fire. We have ancestors that died by lynching. You have air. We have ancestors that were buried alive. If you're unfamiliar with it, there was this concentration camp in Mississippi where 20,000 newly emancipated slaves were placed in concentration camps in Mississippi, and the majority of were men, women, and children. And they died the death of disease and starvation. They weren't buried alive, but they were located at the bottom of a pit where peach trees grew. And this place was called Devil's Punch Bowl. And people still won't um, eat those peaches. But we have things like this, and then we have undocumented things, of course, that we don't know about. But so we have fire, we have air, we have earth, and the water. So there were slaves that were pushed overboard for whatever reason that they were pushed overboard. And then we have slaves that jumped. We have some slaves that were priestesses and priests, were medicine women and medicine men that were sages and seers that wanted to the information that they had, the knowledge, the wisdom that they had, they wanted it to remain intact and not be dismantled through trauma and slavery and all of that because this wasn't the first slave trade. Um, so they jumped in the water, and as Bobby Hemmett would say, has said, as Bobby Hemmett says, they are the scientists that live in the water. And so when I have troubles, when I have injustices that are happening, when I need protection, and then I feel as if somebody's harming me or trying to harm me or trying to harm someone that I love and close to me or something like that, we have ancestors that are in many different dimensions. If you are listening to this and you are Black, we weren't just in Africa, we were everywhere. And I think that there seems to be some sort of misconception about this because we've been told over and over and over again, we all came over here in the slave trade, we all came over here in the slave trade. And yes, a lot of us did, and we have ancestors that did, but a lot of us were already here. And you can see this in different pilgrim journals. You can look at the Olmec heads that were here for the Mayans and the Aztecs. And so we have to understand that we've been here for a very long time. So we have ancestors. There's even, and they talk about in the Civil Book, and I'll put this up on Instagram. There are, when we're talking about Europe, like when you're talking about European people fighting Europeans and Vikings, a lot of them were African women that were doing that. So you got to understand that's when you can call in when you're having problems, when somebody is giving you a bad time and somebody's trying to attack you, you can call in that shit. You can call in motherfucking ancestors that live in the water to support you when a motherfucker is drinking water. No, I'm just kidding. You know what I mean? A lot of protection and a lot of support with our ancestors, with our benevolent ancestors that we can call in. We can ask them, I'm starting a business. I've never done this before. Is there somebody who that I don't know maybe their name, but is there somebody in my blood or is there somebody close to me, a benevolent ancestor or a benevolent deceased elder that can please support me with running this business, with starting this business? I'm learning to be more gentle. Is there a benevolent ancestor that can help me be more feminine? I'm learning to take charge of my life. I'm learning to heal this trauma. I'm learning to alchemize. Is there a benevolent ancestor that can help me alchemize? And you know, we Black women are the queens of alchemizing. I mean, you take one little piece of food and we can make it feed 90 people. Okay? We were given scraps that even their dogs didn't want. I remember I watched this Gordon Ramsay episode and he went to this soul food restaurant and he cleared that plate and went into the kitchen and was like, God damn. And can you imagine your ancestors oppressing someone and giving them scraps that they wouldn't even give their dogs or their animals, and then years later, hundreds of years later, generations later, people are paying $30, $40 for it, $50 for it. Can you imagine? Tell me that's not alchemy, you know? So, and when we are going through this transition, because things will fall apart, things will become a little bit of chaotic before they do. It's important to really, really dive into ancestral veneration. It's really important to give thanks. They are watching over us, but just like most spirit world, like the angels, they can't help you if you don't ask. So you have to ask for support. You have to ask for help. And again, I don't. ever send any ancestors or the divine. I never send out attacks. I just think that's very weak. I think that's very low vibrational magic. And I think that it's important to understand that there is spiritual rank. We live in a world where anybody can buy anything, anybody can get a Google spell, get a TikTok spell. Like, people just do it. And it is what it is because we live in this whitewashed, colonized world where you can buy it, you can have it. But that's not how it works in the spiritual realm. Very spiritual realm. There are people who are very, 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 very powerful high priestesses and sibyls and goddesses. And it's important to mind your business, you know. And honestly, that's how a lot of people are gonna get taken out because they're fucking with shit they don't have any business with. But it's important to really understand that people it's spiritual rank, so you never know what kind of protection people have around you. You don't know what kind of ancestors people have that will fuck you up. So, like I said, some of us have warriors, female African warriors who used to fuck grown ass men up. Some of us have ancestors in the sea below the sea and in the sky above the sky. And people can tell you all day, this is a myth. No, baby. We're going to see more and more things that we thought were myths are not myths. How I set up my protection is that it's like this. I was born in Atlanta. I'm from the South. And how we get down there is if you run up in somebody's house, you're going to get shot. That's just what's going to happen. And it's the same thing. It's like I mind my business, but around me and my family, around my house, around my temple, around my body, around me, there is protection. Anubis is our guard dog. You heard? And you come over and into a space that you're not supposed to be in, and you trespass and you fuck with me when I'm minding my own business, while my family's minding our own business, while we're doing our things, while we're trying to be the best we can be, while we're literally in our lanes, and you come over here, that's when you gonna get fucked up. So it's kind of like what I like to do is I set up protection before I even leave my house. I call in protection and just say, call in protection from who I believe in, who supports me. I just say, please protect us, and please, even from ourselves sometimes, and not in a bad way, but just like from self sabotage or from, belief systems, and protect my peace because that is very valuable, So that's how I set it up. And if somebody comes over and if they think that they can fuck with me, which they plenty of people have, then they learn very quickly and swiftly that I'm not the one, you know. And that's how you set it up. Just we don't have to go and try to attack anybody or anything like that. But if people come across the fence and trespass and do things that they have no business doing because they have this need to control, this need to find out, this insatiable curiosity and this insatiable need to control and dominate and manipulate others, then you're going to find out. So I think that that is how we can set up our protection and everything like that. And yeah, I think that's a lot of stuff that I have for today. And so I'm going to call it. And I think that that is it. And thank you guys so much for listening. That was a lot to process. And join me next Wednesday for another episode of Off to the Land of Milk and Honey. And be well.